We don't talk enough about what it actually costs to walk away from an identity that you spent decades building. Today's plot twist isn't about starting over from nothing, it's about starting over on purpose.
Welcome to Plot Twist, the show where we unpack the unexpected turns that shape our careers, relationships, and ourselves. I'm your host, Tiana, leader, speaker, and corporate mom. And I'm sitting down with guests that prove that growth begins often at the twist of a story. Let's dive in.
This episode of Plot Twist is brought to you by Sagga Publishing because sometimes the biggest plot twists don't just happen in life, they happen between the pages of a book. Whether you're into psychological thrillers that keep you up at night or children's stories that gently remind you what strength really looks like, Sagga Publishing curates literary works that meet you exactly where you are. And yes, a few plot twists of my own are on the way. My first children's book, My Mom is a Superhero, which celebrates the triumphs moms pull off in our own supernatural way every day. If you're ready for your next read or perspective shift, visit sagapublishing.com and find your next plot twist today. My guest, Mary Romasanta, spent 20 years in tech before making the bold decision to step fully into who she has always been underneath, an author and eventually a publisher. We'll touch on how her childhood shaped her voice, but this conversation is really about reinventing, betting on yourself mid career, and what happens when you stop asking, is this safe? And instead start asking, is this mine? Mary, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you, Tiana, for having me.
For a long time, tech professional wasn't just what you did, it was truly part of who you were in a professional space, of course. What was the hardest part of letting go of that identity?
And in a lot of ways, it felt like a marriage, something that you have really put yourself into. I know that with the different generations now, it's a little different with the job hopping and whatnot, but I had really poured my heart and soul out into this career. And again, I kind of equate it to being married to it. I wanted to work it out. I remembered the good times. I wanted to stay for the children, so to speak, being my team members and the people that I've managed all these years and those people that are rooting for you saying, no, don't leave. We love you. But at the end of the day, you have to make the decision that's right for you.
When some people are listening to their heart, their mind, or even their body, there's this dream about walking away from corporate life, but there's so much investment in staying in corporate. What did betting on yourself really look like behind the scenes once you didn't have that paycheck and that structure that was keeping you there?
I want to say that it was scary, but that's not true. The scary part came while I was still in the process of grieving, that DABDA process. And I say DABDA because that's my way of remembering the process steps back in college, right? So the denial, acceptance, bargaining, etc. So the scary part kind of was wrapped, engulfed in that grievance process. But once I finally came to acceptance, it was liberating. It was, my husband literally said, "I watch you dancing around the house now. I don't think I watched you dancing around the house during daytime hours. I've never seen this level of happiness from you." But, once I finally accepted that and with his support, and I know not everyone has a husband, so I wanna kind of step back and talk about this, how important that this is. This isn't about me having a spouse that saved me. This isn't about salvation. I would, and I think he would even venture to say that I saved him in a lot of ways. What I did have is a support group. I had my children, I had my husband, I have siblings, I have my parents who knew this part of me was just ready to come out and take over. And it was that support and what I'll call those pivot cheerleaders that really helped to encourage me to kind of step away. You got this. Now, it took some work for sure. During this grievance process, I did start the financial planning, right? So I started actually financial planning well in advance. So if there's any younger listeners out there, I would suggest that they really focus on their 401ks, that they focus on saving investments. I know that all sounds very big and daunting, but it's a lot easier once you start to kind of get into it than it seems. That really allowed me at this point now to be in a career that's not paying even remotely close, to be honest, but my heart is gaining, my spirit is gaining. And I'm in a situation that, hey, I did the work for all those years. And now, fortunately, I can thrive. And right now, I don't think I've even mentioned I have 3 kids. The youngest is 5 now. I have a just turned 12-year-old. I have a 9-year-old. And so it's important to be there for them. It's important to show up for your kids, but not just financially. And I think that was the big thing is that I was showing up and I was exhausted. And I ended every day with a with and my husband always caught it. I never actually realized that I was doing it until he called it out. Now my hours are intentional, my days are intentional, my time is intentional, me speaking with you is intentional. And I couldn't have helped or prayed for anything better.
Peace is so important. You can't buy peace. It's something that you have to create for yourself. And with being a mom, your kids are going to be disappointed whenever you say, no, you can't have that toy or that Happy Meal. But they are definitely going to value. I remember my mom was at every recital I did and sat in that middle row, or my mom tucked me in bed, or whatever it is that that routine is that you create for your kids that is priceless. And so I hope that anyone that's listening also takes that same feedback to say, okay, what am I giving my kids? And it's not just the toys, but what am I giving them for their childhood and the memories that they're going to carry with them?
I completely agree, but I have to add one thing that I did not expect from this change, from this pivot, which is I would come out of work and I was remote. So when I say come out of work, I was at
You're
home.
just coming right out of the living room
I'm
or
coming
coming
out of
out
the
of your
door.
home office.
Right. Coming out of my office. But I was so exhausted. It was this muscle that didn't want to give anymore. That's the best way that I can explain it. And so we would eat out because I was exhausted, my husband's exhausted, and so we found ourselves eating out, and I thought that that was something that I wanted to do. I thought it was a treat. Since leaving that career, I've actually cooked at home more, my husband has cooked at home more. I can't tell you how much money we've saved. That was not intentional. So when you say, that we don't have that meal anymore, I think my kids are grateful. And then also that treat became stressful because now you have homework, now you have baths, now you have haircuts. I have 3 boys, so lots of haircuts.
Mhm.
So it almost became like that treat, that whole reason that I'm doing what I'm doing is now working against me. So I will say that even my children are happier just having more home cooked meals at home.
We romanticize reinvention, but it's rarely clean or straight line. There's lots of twists and turns. What surprised you the most?
I think what surprised me the most is how many people do this and are successful mid-career. I'm in my 40s now, and as I'm pivoting, I think I'm 40, 41. I started my dream when I was in my 20s or early before that. Again, I started with writing. I had a passion for journalism. My background, public relations and communication studies. I worked for the San Antonio Express News in high school. I was the editor in chief of my high school newspaper, uh, yearbook. All signs pointed to this thing, and so I thought, okay, well, that thing didn't happen. And so now this is my thing. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that when you're in your 40s, reinvention just sounds like so ambiguous. It sounds so like who's really doing this in their 40s, right? I guess, and we talked about marriage, very similar to how someone might be who's getting remarried in their 40s. But you think about people in real life people like Julia Child, for instance. She wrote her first cookbook at 49. Thing followed. Someone like Vera Wang started designing in her 40s. The McDonald's franchise didn't start until the owner of McDonald's was in his 50s. Leslie Jones, for crying out loud. I hope people know who Leslie Jones is because I'm a
I
big
know who
fan.
she is.
Oh my gosh, she has a whole skit on life starting after 40. And even, Jeff Bezos, not in his 40s, but he didn't pivot out of his corporate career until his 30s to start Amazon. So I think that, like, for me, the biggest thing that I didn't know was how normal it is to walk away from your career, be it in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. What I've learned in kind of looking at these individuals is that there's no waste. And if that's not clear, I just want to be clear. I am so grateful for the time, for the colleagues, for what I gained during my corporate career. But that time span, what it brings is clarity into that next level.
Hey, quick pause. If you're still listening, that tells me something about you. Go ahead and click follow or subscribe so conversations like this keep showing up in your feed. It's a small click for you, but a huge help for the show. All right, let's get back to the episode. So, if this chapter of your life had a plot twist title, what would you call it?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one because the
You're an author, it shouldn't be that hard.
that's why I don't name my chapters. Chapter 1, chapter 2. I would say that for me, it's "Don't believe me, just watch." There is gonna
Oh,
be a
okay.
lot of times where individuals outside of your cheerleaders, even sometimes your cheerleaders, they don't see it, they don't believe it, and this is something also that's also carried me through early ages. I didn't grow up in a privileged background, and even my own close circles sometimes said, "Hey, such and such can only get you so far. Your smarts can only get you so far. You know, your looks can only get you so far. Your looks will fade. You know, get in line.
Yeah,
Don't believe
yeah.
me, just watch."
Very good words of wisdom. So, let's talk real briefly about your books. When I picked up one of your books, The Internal Secret, in my mind, you told me that you're a psychological thriller writer. I had no idea how much of a pivot it was going to be from the Mary Romasanta that I saw on the resume. So tell us a little bit about your genre, what's inspired your style of writing.
When I finally did the work to figure out who I was, what I had kind of shoved in the back burner because I didn't get that job as a PR journalist, communications person, it really started to kind of bring out the real authentic Mary Romasanta, right? Who am I? What is my purpose? I personally hid my story. As a technologist, as a Latina, I was focused on my achievements. I went to the University of Texas. I have an MBA. I have a PMP. I have a PMIACP. The list goes on. And I think that in the process, I didn't realize that I was suppressing who I was growing up. And who I was growing up was a pastor's daughter. I was a little shy girl who maybe didn't get a lot of attention because I was the youngest of six. Grew up in a very poor community. Actually, was raised across the street from the San Fernando Cemetery. So, literally, could throw a rock over the fence of the cemetery. I saw things that I think for a lot of years I had repressed, thinking that if I share these things will make me seem weird, seem dark. And so I always kind of had this persona of which was hard, happy, bubbly, positive, happy, bubbly, positive. I think I spent so many years trying to kind of fit myself into this narrative of this technologist, of this person that doesn't have kids, because I can show up at any time, at any day, any hour. You call Mary Romasanta, eyes at the time, she will be there. But I didn't realize how much of a story I had to tell and how much of my background was a part of my story. I thought it was my background. Hey, shove it back there.
Yeah.
Hey, no one needs to know that my dad performed countless exorcisms, and believe that if you will or not. No one needs to know that I grew up in a haunted house. That was terrifying for me. Why would anybody else want to know that? Those experiences actually ended up being critical to my journey. Let me step back. I'm a pastor's daughter and I have a lot of faith. I have faith in God. I have seen good, I have seen bad. I have witnessed some things, I have heard some things. I have felt fear. I have felt transformation. And it ended up being to the point to where I felt like there is a real story here to tell, combined with my experiences as a technologist, combined with the people that I've met. Oh my gosh, the friends, the family, the people that I consider family now that are friends. And it just ended up being one story after another. I actually am starting a series with my brother. My brother and I are the youngest of six and the only two that really, for the most part, experience personally some of the supernatural things in our house. Really great story. I've actually gotten in touch with the grandson of the person that lived in the house before we did. So,
Ooh.
yeah, talk about a plot twist. In doing this story with my brother, we're talking about, what are the things that you've seen or what do you remember? What do I remember? Kind of reconciling those things that we remember both. And there was this chest, a wood chest that was outside of my parents' house for a lot of years. We moved into this house. We didn't know it was haunted. So we moved into this house that's located right behind the flower shop that my parents bought. And we were actually living in the flower shop. So to kind of testify to how poor we were, we sacrificed actually having a home to live in so that we can have the flower shop and the church, and we lived in this back room. House right behind it became available for sale. We remembered the old lady that lived there, and my brother talks about it in the first episode of the preface. He talks about how he was terrified when the ball would go over the fence. It was scary. We bought the house in 1994 for $13,000.
Holy moly.
What a deal, right? $13,000. So we move in and then stuff starts happening. So as I'm talking to my brother about our experiences, he says something happened at a house. And I said, I think something happened at a house too. And so I think when we don't have closure, in my mind, writing is very therapeutic. And so I created that closure in my novel Infestation. How that novel closes, although it's based on real experiences, how it ends is fictional 100%. Did not happen. And that's the beauty of, fiction. I created an ending, but my brother had never told me that he thought something happened in that house. And so I said, you know, how rude of me as a writer to not research what happened in that house. Like I've never researched what happened in that house. I think I was too terrified to even touch it. Not scared anymore. It was a World War II vet that lived in the house. And I literally start the prologue with a World War II vet coming home from the war.
Know that at
I
the
didn't know
time.
that. And I'm not a historical buff. I am not like I there's certain events in history
Right.
that really intrigue me. When my husband was like telling me about World War II, so he's like, it'd be funny or it'd be interesting. I think that's how I got inspired to put World War II in the preface of my book. And then the other thing that I put in my book was that this woman would not leave the house without being terrified. So basically found out that the person that was living in the house was indeed a World War II vet. I had this chest. It was outside the house for like so many years. It was getting weathered, just on the verge of garbage. And I asked my dad if I could take the chest home and maybe refurnish it. In doing the research, after speaking with my brother and starting the podcast, I found his grandson. So his grandson's around my age. And I actually reached out to him on Facebook. I said, any chance that you have any association with this property? He said, my grandparents live there. My great grandmother died there. And yes, I absolutely do. I said, does this chest look familiar to you? Of course, now I've refinished it, but of course, I regret, anything that I did to touch it. And he said, I remember that chest. I remember digging into that chest every time I went home after school, the same elementary school that I went to school. And he said, I can't believe anybody left it behind. And so I just asked him, was there anything suspicious, anything weird, anything supernatural that happened in that house, while you were there? And he said, nothing, nothing ever happened in that house. Loving memories, beautiful memories. The only thing that he said, and which I thought was funny, this is our first and only conversation. He said the only thing that ever happened that was strange, I thought, was that a dog really scared my grandma while she was living there. And I don't know if the dog like came too close or it made her fall or something to that effect. But he said that from that day on, my grandma would not leave the house without me holding her.
Hmm.
And what makes that more interesting is that the prologue to my book Infestation starts with a woman, a man. The man just comes home from World War II and he is stopped outside by a dog. The dog ends up, and I'm gonna ruin the prologue for you. The dog murders the guy, okay? But ends up being an integral part of the whole story. So I just think it's fascinating.
That is so fascinating. Have you talked to anybody who's still living in the house? Does the house still exist?
My parents still live there.
Your parents still live in the house. Do your parents also notice or feel like there's some hauntings in the house too?
My uh my parents haven't felt anything in that house, and I don't either anymore. It's gone. But the second that they
Interesting.
but the second that they move out, I promise. So here's what I really believe happened. It was a beautiful house. It was a loving house. This person has nothing but fond memories. Long story short, I'm gonna return the World War II chest to the guy. He's so happy. Yeah,
Oh,
it's like almost a 100-year-old chest by this point.
yeah, and you refinished it.
No, I kind of feel bad about that. But you open it and it still smells so old. It's just like it hits you in the face. But anyway, I think after everybody realized, hey, this house is actually haunted, and that we took steps to protect it,
Okay.
meaning we prayed over it, we worshiped there, always blasting Christian music, always blasting worship music, always literally had church band practice there. I think that's what that space needed to be healed from the
Mhm.
infestation. And then it did go away. I promise. I go in there,
Okay.
I could sleep there. I'm fine. It's fine.
Oh, all of this is fascinating information, Mary. So tell us a little bit more about the project you and your brother started, because I did see some buzzing on YouTube about it.
So my brother and I have started a little mini series, so to speak, little bite-sized chunks of these experiences that we had at the house. And I think it's been a really, even between him and I, it's been a bit of a bonding experience. I didn't think that you can get so much out of these. I'm calling them bite-sized stories. So for anyone who is into horror, hauntings, I will say nothing that we speak about is fiction. Everything that we speak about is things that we remember, things that we recall. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely check out my series. We're calling it the True Stories of Infestation on YouTube. I will just also add one more thing. I'm really excited about La Llorona coming out very soon. La Llorona is not something that I personally experience in terms of a haunting, but it is sort of a haunting of the psychological aspect of it in terms of think about grieving, think about, the dreams that you have, think about things that you wish you could have said, the things that you wish you could have done. It's a big grievance snowball. So excited about it. La Llorona is something that goes real deep in terms of Hispanic roots and Korean, the Mugwishin, which is a water demon that is said to haunt people based on a trauma that this individual has personally experienced. So excited to share La Llorona with you and so grateful for you having me on the show, Tiana.
The pleasure is all mine. So, Mary, if anyone wants to look more into your work or connect with you, what are two ways that they can reach out?
MaryRomasanta.com or SaggaPublishing.com.
Thanks for tuning into Plot Twist. If this story made you pause, reflect, or smile, please share it with someone who's in the middle of their own plot twist. You can catch more episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and connect with me on my socials. Until next time, keep writing your own story.